to what you need at this really important time. As I said, this is a critical time, I think, for Vermont, for Vermont's children, youth, and families. It's an unprecedented time. We've been saying that over and over with COVID. I know that all of you are on this call because you're concerned. I also know that you're tired, and I know that you don't have enough answers. But I also know that this field is a field that has grit and determination. I know that this is a field that cares deeply for children, youth, and families. And I know, knowing many of you and knowing this field so well, I know that this is a field that knows how to innovate. And all of those things are going to be called for, you know, over the next 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks and beyond. When we came together back in the spring when COVID pandemic first started in Vermont, we came together as a statewide community, and many of you were in those conversations. And if you remember, we took a moment and we asked ourselves, you know, as the after school field, as the community of partners and programs here in the state, when we look back on this time of COVID-19, you know, what story do we want to tell? You know, do we want the story to be, well, schools closed down and kids didn't have anything to do, or do we want a different story? And I have to say, you responded boldly and in so many creative and different ways, right? You pivoted to deliver school meals. You offered hangout spaces and programming online. You provided resources for families. You sent home activities and enrichment packets. You ran childcare for essential workers. And you did all that. And then when summer came around, you didn't write off summer. You didn't say, okay, we got to rest, we got to regroup. You actually stepped forward as a field, and you did everything you could to provide programs for children and youth, and you did it because it is a part of Vermont's economic recovery, right? To have places for kids to be so that people can work. But I think even more importantly, you did it as a field because it was the right thing to do for children and youth. And knowing that young people need to be in community with others, they need access to adult role models, they need programming, they need engagement, they need enrichment. So you stepped forward to offer that. Whether you did it virtually or in person, you showed that it could be done. You showed parents and communities and educators across the state that this was a way to do it. And even when school buildings and other spaces that you were used to operating in were closed, you stepped up and you made it work. So that story of after school in Vermont, you know, during that COVID crisis is a powerful one to tell. And looking what's happening around our state right now, we're definitely at another crossroads. And I'd like to challenge us all to ask ourselves again, you know, when we look at school reopening in Vermont, you know, what is the story we want to tell about our field and the role we played in reopening? And that's what this call series is about. We're starting it today with a lot of listening and sharing. We've got resources to put in front of you, some key state updates. We're going to highlight some strategies that have worked both over the summer and in communities around reopening. And then we're going to organize our efforts so that we can work together both at the local and state level to be able to write the story that we want to write about this reopening time. I'm going to start with a quick tool using a Mentimeter, which is an online polling tool, to get a quick look to see who's on the call and what's on your mind. So I'm going to share my screen. So you should be able to share my screen, and if you go to online, go to www.menti.com. So you go to this website and you enter the code 955076. I'm just going to wait a moment for people to be able to do that. So it's www.menti.com 955076. Those of you who are just joining us, we're going to do some quick polling of the group to see who's on the call and what's on everyone's mind. And we're using this tool called Menti. So we're starting out with a word cloud. You have the opportunity to write 3 words. into the cloud, and it's going to create the word cloud based on how we're feeling. So the question is, how are you feeling as we start this call? And if you see a word that's in the word cloud that is in line with yours, you can type the same word and it'll make it show up bigger. And on my screen, you have the word cloud as it's being built. It seems telling, right? Right in the center is hopeful. Surrounded by excited, tired, and nervous. Frustrated, overwhelmed, curious, uncertain. Good, determined, roller coaster. Okay, I'm gonna switch to another poll. This one asks, what type of organization are you affiliated with? Are you a licensed school age care program, 21C program, other school-based? And you can check more than one option. There's room for state or regional group that actually provides programming, like 4-H, or state and regional group that does other supports, like Hunger Free Vermont.
Holly, that's not the question I get. I get what supports would be most useful. Somebody else has that too.
I just clicked to go to another slide and I got the right question.
So where did you click, Heather, at the bottom?
Up at the top, it said something about go to next slide, and it worked.
Yeah, it said the presenter changed the slide to follow them.
Yeah.
Follow me. Are you finding it, Sarah?
No, but that's okay. I can't do much other than answer the next questions.
Okay.
Someone else said if you just go back into menti.com with those numbers, it might refresh for you.
So it looks like we have quite a few direct program. Actually, most of you are direct program providers, 21C and or licensed, other school-based or other community-based, as well as some of our other partners across the state. Let's see what happens when I switch the slide. The question is, do you plan to run in-person programming in some capacity this fall? And if you joined late, we're at www.menti.com. It's here at the top of my screen, and this is the code to enter. And if you're on the phone, the choices that people have are yes, undecided but leaning towards yes, not sure, undecided but leaning towards no, or no. And overwhelmingly, with the folks on the call, are planning to run in-person programming in some capacity this fall. I'm going to go to the next slide. How would you rate your current level of collaboration with local schools around reopening? So this is a bar that you can select along. If you're on the left, you're not connected at all to what's happening in the schools. And if you're on the right, you're strongly connected to the conversations that's happening. And if you're watching it on the screen, you can sort of see how the votes are spread out. So we're a little bit better than half, but we're not all there yet. Give it one more second. I'm going to go to the next slide. How concerned are you about the following? So this is a pretty complicated pool, but it has a number of different elements. And then on the left, you're only slightly concerned about having staff or not having enough space. on the right, if you click one of those points further over, you're very concerned. So this gives you a chance to let us know on each one of these elements what's your level of concern. If you're on the phone and or can't see it for any reason, what we're talking about is not having enough staff, not having enough space, not being able to align with the school schedules, not having regular and sufficient number of participants, not having enough funding, not having enough health and safety supplies, or someone getting sick, whether staff, child, youth, so forth. Right now, the top concerns are about not having enough staff to run the program, someone getting sick, and not having enough space or access to space. Funding is creeping up as a concern. Okay, I'm gonna move to the next slide. Oh, people have already answered some of this. I think this is where we got off track with each other. But if you haven't yet, this is the slide about what supports would be most useful. Guidance on health and safety, more opportunities to be the discussion, more flexibility around space, help recruiting staff, more free or accessible training for staff, and ideas and activities for programming to do with children and youth. That can be in person or virtual. And everything's coming in pretty even on the numbers. It's such a great field for seeking out what you need. All right. I'm going to go to the next one. And that's the how are we feeling as you start this call. So let's stay with the hopeful, excited, uncertain, nervous, and anxious, and see where it takes us during the course of this call. I'm going to stop sharing here and go back to our full group. A few things that we want to announce and share with the field is that I think we are too, excited, hopeful, anxious, concerned. I totally understand that roller coaster piece. One of the things that we do want to share is that you're not alone. There are, as the school reopening plans have come out, a number of different groups and agencies have stepped forward to sort of push a little bit on what's going to be best for children and youth, and with the percentage of in-school learning versus virtual. Some of you are in districts where they're trying to go back 5 days a week, even if it's for a partial day, especially for young students. Other of you are in districts where maybe 2 days a week kids are going to be in school, and the rest of the time they're going to be home or with families or with you, or we don't know where. So there's a lot of unanswered questions about that. I hope all of you have seen by now that the governor did push back the restart date, reopening date for schools to September 8th. I know moving targets can be frustrating, but I also hope that that buys us a couple of extra weeks to sort of get into these conversations in a fuller way. I will say some of the plans when they came out, I was really concerned in some places that after school wasn't strongly seen in the equation, and that there seemed to be an assumption that that kids could learn for part of a week or part of a day or whatever, and then everybody was going to be able to be home, virtual learning, and families were going to be able to support that. It raises serious concerns for us around equity issues, and not all families having the same resources to support schedules. It raises concerns about families who have students in more than one school and now they're on different schedules. It raises concerns about families that need to be at work that don't have the opportunity and luxury to be able to work from home. And it really raises concerns about children and youth that have already been falling behind, and what happens over the next few stages. A couple of things that have also happened, the state pediatricians group and medical providers have been weighing in. The state pediatricians group, if you didn't see it, had a letter that went out that strongly urged schools to rethink the reopening plans, especially for younger children, and to try, if in any way possible, to have schools reopen 5 days a week to provide that consistency of care and that opportunity for young people to be together, really focusing on the development of the whole child. I will say one of the things that we heard from many of you that were running programs this summer, well, I know you still are, and I know it's hard and I know it's long hours, and over again, the main message we heard from you was the joy. And it was so uplifting to hear, right? It was the joy of being to be with young people again and to support the children, youth, and families. And it was the joy of the kids being able to be with each other. So I'm hoping that in these conversations around reopening, we can hold on to that image of joy. But do know that state pediatricians and medical providers are also, in this camp and trying to support these conversations. There will also be a funding opportunity coming out soon from the Department for Children and Families. It's going to be for $12 million total. It will be for summer programs, after school, child care, children's integrated services, pre-K. So it's a large number of programs tapping into that 12 million. We're hoping that it will be announced maybe next week. So please keep your eyes and ears open for that, and we'll get it out through email and work with the Department of Children and Families and the Child Development Division to make sure you get your questions answered. It'll probably be a quick turnaround kind of response thing. So be on your toes, and we will help in any way we can around that. There is also a number of conversations happening around the state about how to connect after school providers and summer program providers and town rec programs that run summer programs with school day providers, especially through this time period. Some of those conversations are really around social, emotional support, and some of it is more around logistics. And it's trying to partner those of you in the field that have done some of this work over the summer with school day teachers who haven't yet gone through reopening or haven't yet run a program to see how they connect. So if that is something that you'd like more information of or to learn about, please type into the chat, and we're going to say the chat at the end and we'll know who to reach out to. The question about the funding is that it is through the state. It's through DCF, and it was allocated by the legislature through DCF, and it's federal CARES dollars. Let's see. Oh, and then these calls themselves, we will be continuing these on into the next, however long it takes to get where we need to go in the next few weeks or months. Some resources that we'd like to share. I'm going to share my screen again so you can see the resources on the screen, and then we'll also put links in the chat. One of the resources that has come out from our national partners at the After School Alliance that we wanted all of you to know about and hope that you might be able to use is this framing around how to talk about how after school supports student learning. So this is framing to help get after school into these conversations so that when we're looking at reopening of schools and we're looking at education for children and youth, that it is not just the school day and the academic learning that is being considered, but also your programs and program partners who can be part of this conversation. And I want to point you to the second page where they have these 4 sort of key elements of how after school helps address students' needs. And these are, when you use frames, you can pick and choose across the frames, but it's a good idea to be aware of all 4 because depending on what conversation you get in with and who you're speaking with, you may find that one speaks louder than another. So there's this whole whole frame piece around more time for engaged learning. So what your programs offer really is a way to complement and reinforce the school day by building out that time. And that is especially true if schools are going to have reduced schedules. So that's one argument. The second one, which we saw you do very strongly in the spring and summer, is this sustaining connections to families and communities. So many times when it is the after school program that is in touch with the family and has that close connection, and is able to check in and see if they have the resources they need on housing or food, or employment, or whatever other needs were coming up from families. So how to like leverage you in your role as a program provider to help strengthen those connections and take some of that off the schools, be a close partner and take some of that off of them. The third area is around how students feel and heal. So this is around social and emotional learning. And we know that students are, isolated and bored and disconnected. When we talk to young people, we have a group of young people that we're working with every week. And then we, also in our own lives interact. And we were sharing stories actually this morning. And, it's the opportunities for athletics and passions and arts and hobbies and choir and music and all those kind of joys that they that really are a part of the human, right? The human experience, and something that children and youth are craving, and how your programs can really step in to help add that, to back into the day, so that isn't lost. And oftentimes that is also what helps to engage and get young people, to school, and a part of that. And then also the fourth area is addressing inequities that are likely worsening. So many of you do such a really good job of keeping your eye out for children and youth that might have a tendency to slip through the cracks, or the family situation and what to watch for, and can sort of raise the flag and help call attention to that and provide some additional resources. So we offer this framing here as a way to really think about how you talk about what it is that you're offering. The second one I'm not going to go into too detailed. It's 6 pages long, but it's a really interesting sort of plan about how to do this connection. And this is something that we at Vermont Afterschool are following and looking into. And it talks about these school community partnerships. It talks about commitment to active engaged learning, family engagement, intentional program health and well-being. And then it has sort of these different partners and what they play. So it's really the building blocks of how to have a strong reopening plan in our state, in Vermont. At the beginning, I talked about doing this two-prong approach to really strengthen our approach in Vermont. And, the first level of that is what we do at the local level. So some of the tools that we have to offer, one of them is this next one. So if you were on that Mentimeter, indicating that you hadn't yet made connections, or you were still looking to make some additional connections, one of the tools we have to offer is a sample email that it's a Google Doc, you can cut and paste, you can change it, and then there's also a sample letter. And it takes those points about time and staff and innovation, engaging parents and families, and gives you some language really to ask to be invited to the table and to make the argument for why. So those of you who are not yet collaborating, we really would like you to be able to use this or something like this, because the more programs that are working in close collaboration, the more we can change the norm. We don't want it to be the unusual thing, to have a close collaboration with after school, or it's like the rare case where that happened. We want it to be the norm across the state. And the more that is happening, the better it is going to be for all. A related resource to that is a condensed version of that longer document. This one walks through, and actually you can use it for your own planning, but you can also use it if you're headed into a planning meeting with school administrators or others, and it goes through different scenarios, whether it's return to school for in-classroom, participating remotely, or a mix. And it says for each of these different cases, how after school can help and what kind of roles you can play. So this might be something that, before going into meeting, you can sort of go through and circle and think through where your program can fit in. It also, in each section, provides these did you know examples. These are national examples. We will, in the next week, be filling these in with state examples. So all the examples will be Vermont-based examples. And one of our requests to you is if you have a great example that would fit into this grid, please let us know. You can type into the chat now, you can follow up afterwards, but if you are willing to have your program be featured in that way, we think this is going to be even more powerful when we can say this is happening in Brattleboro or Newport or Springfield or Bristol or wherever it's happening. So you can start to see when you go down the list of the different examples. The one other thing that we'd like to emphasize at the local level is for those of you who are maybe beyond these tools and you're already in really tight collaboration, we need to hear from you as well. We need articles about that. We need letters to the editor. We need feature stories. We need, for people in parts of the state where the collaboration isn't happening, we need them to be able to point to your example. So wherever you were on that grid, there are definite actions for you to be able to take. One of the things we saw so strongly in the summer, I don't know if many of you remember the video that came out from the Expanded Learning Project in the Mount Abe District with Mandy Chesley Park. When people saw the video of how they were running the program for essential care, child care for essential workers, seeing it opened up so many doors. And we think it can be the same way with the collaboration, seeing some creative examples of how after school and school day are partnering around school reopening, how it's different than just assuming kids are here every other day or whatever it is, and then they're home. The more we can offer those examples, I think it will start to open up more thinking and more creativity. At the state level, so that's everything that we're putting out and looking to partner with you on at the local level for the first set of tools. At the state level, we have a couple of things going as well. We have started a statewide petition asking for a state level plan. I know that all the decisions on school reopening are geared towards local decisions because of our education system. This petition isn't aimed just at education, it's across state agencies. Some of you work closely with the Child Development Division, some of you it's the Department of Health, some of you it's the Agency of Education, some of you it's the Agency of Commerce. Really what we're asking for is as a state level look that asks what's happening with children and youth beyond the school schedules and as part of reopening. We feel it's important because of the cross-agency nature of the field. We also feel it's important because what we have right now are communities where maybe school is going to be 5 days a week and after school is closely connected. And so those parents are going to have great supports and a way to move forward through COVID in the fall. And we have communities where it's looking like most of the learning is going to be virtual and there's no partnership with the out of school time field or after school programs. And those parents are going to be really struggling to meet the needs of the children and youth, and those children and youth are not going to have the same opportunities. And we really feel that it takes a statewide look to say what's happening across our state, what are the disparities, what are the inequities, and what can we do in funding, legislation, support, coordination across agencies that would really make this scenario better for all children, youth, and families. So that is what the petition is about. I would like to ask, we have a bunch of people on this call. If everybody on this call could get 10 people to sign the petition, we would very quickly have close to 1,000 people signing on. And then if a few of them each got a few people to sign, it would grow greatly. So one of the commitments here that we're asking for is if everyone can sign the petition. This is for individuals, share it with others. We'd really like to get other voices. So it's not just after school providers talking about the importance of after school. We'd really like to get voices from parents and grandparents and family members and caregivers, medical professionals and so forth. So please share the petition, please sign the petition. And then we can use this to start leverage some of these conversations at the state level. The corresponding piece is a sign-on letter for organizations. So the petition really is for individuals. If you work with an organization that is able to sign on to a letter, it's asking for the same thing. It's a statewide look at reopening and having some of these conversations. So there is a separate letter for organizations. The third thing that you can be watching for from the state level is a thank you campaign that we want to start up and run as summer programs close out, really to draw attention to all the amazing work that you've been doing in the fields over the summer, supporting students. And also to acknowledge that you've been running and responding to program needs. At the same time now, you're having to work on restart in a really complicated scenario, and that there isn't really a break there. So we will be looking to feature stories and put things in local papers where it can be seen. So we want to hear from you on that as well. I'm going to turn it over to Nicole because we have a couple of other folks who are going to share some of the strategies that have worked for them.
Yeah, thanks, Holly. I am going to ask Alyssa Callan from the Essex Junction Parks and Rec to share a little bit about their summer program. And again, just paint that picture of what worked for them this summer about how things might work for this fall. So Alyssa?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Alyssa with the Essex Junction Recreation Department. We started running summer camp back on June 1st, so it's been quite a few weeks at this point, and we've been able to do one 100-kid summer camp, one 40-kid summer camp, and one 40-kid middle school summer camp. And I'd say, you know, most of our successes have just been around the will to just dive right in from the beginning. We've had a great team of coordinators that were able to come up with a great schedule. You know, we didn't even really have to change the schedule that much. We just had to figure out ways to adapt it to the new guidelines that were released. You know, we were fortunate we have a pool, so we were able to incorporate a lot of swimming time in. But, you know, we had a lot of success with even just like coming up with our intake procedures, like every morning. You know, we have some separate spaces where all of the kids are going and getting checked in with, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Alyssa. If you want to follow up with Alyssa, you can put your name in the chat box, as well as, you know, I know that there are lots of others on this call that have been running summer programs. And again, just echoing what Holly was saying earlier about, you know, if you have stories of success, things that worked for you this summer that might work again this fall, please send them so that we can share them back out to the field and to all of you. I'm also going to ask Heather Moore, who's the director of the LEAPS program, to share a little bit about what they're thinking in regard to fall planning and the conversations that they've been having in their district. So Heather?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, our programs, so we're going to be in person. We're doing, our SU's doing the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday split. That's the plan right now, like most SUs are doing. And so we've been talking about shifting away from, you know, our 7-week progressive learning models that we normally have for most of our programs. And when we're in person, we'll do hybrid, but when we're in person, we really want to focus about our programming on team building, community building, and, you know, getting the kids outside and doing movements and stuff that like you can't replicate as easily when you're remote, and the stuff that's like going to be absolutely crucial for some of the resilience factors with our young people, like was mentioned before, of connecting with adults in person. Some of that will also include like maybe stories sharing classes. I've been talking to my staff about maybe developing some moth story hour classes and opportunities for the youth to just share their stories. That's part of like the resilience building and stuff too. Oh, and excuse me 1 second. 1 second, please. Hold on. 1 second, please. Sorry, there's my son. And then in our hybrid model of kind of taking our 7-week progressive learning enrichment opportunities and converting them into kits, kind of similar to the Kiwi Company or Ivy Leagues. I found a website, depotbooks.com, where you can buy inexpensive copies of books. And okay, there we go. He likes to be part of our meetings. Providing the children, their families with a book and activities and have it be a progressive model like we would normally do in person, with various opportunities for them to check in with our instructors on what they're doing for learning. And another part of it is enhancing our parent involvement and collaboration, again, with resiliency factors, with 21C, parenting skills programs that promote parental involvement and family literacy is one of the goals that we almost never really have a lot of time to work towards, because parents can't participate from 3 to 5 normally because they're working. So we've been talking about opening up some of our programs, like maybe a remote yoga class or a foreign language class, to parents enrolled in the program as well. And then they can be students side by side with their children. And I think, 1 second, please. Again, it'll build a lot of protective family factors within the families, I think.
Heather, thank you so much, and exciting to hear the different ways that you're trying to meet student and family needs through a lot of different models. I'm also going to ask Beth Chambers, who's the director of the Encore program, to share a little bit about the conversations that they're having in their district. Beth?
Yeah, so in Orleans County, we're pretty lucky to have been over a month now, I think, without any cases. Our elementary schools are starting the year 5 days a week in-person programming. And so the 9 after-school program sites, we're planning to also run in person on those days. And we've planned for our entire first session to have only outdoor enrichment options. And so a good portion of our schools are already purchasing, and some in combination, with our support, financial support too. We're getting tents and outdoor learning materials and choosing spaces and reinforcing those tents so that they can stick around. We've got we're setting up porta potties so that we won't have to be re-entering the schools. We found locks for those. So we're connecting with a lot of local resources to make an outdoor space for our programs. And we are also limiting the number of students that will be coming in person. So if we have 2 tents available, on a misty, rainy day, we're trying to figure out how many kids we can reasonably have in those spaces. So our approach has been to find a way to be in person whenever possible. And I think that that's kind of our supervisory union approach, as well as, how far can we push it, but what kinds of things can we build to make it work so that we can be in person together. So our maintenance staffs have been building all sorts of things over the past weeks, even before guidance came out, whether they're sneeze guards or plexiglass things or reinforcing outdoor tents so that we can be outside. But that's our current plan, and we're sticking to it.
Thanks so much, Beth. Yeah, and I know many of you that were running programs this summer and have spoken to some of you who are thinking towards fall and really looking at outdoors as an option. So collaborating with your schools to, use the tents that they might already be purchasing or renting, and thinking about how you can extend the time that you can be outdoors is one great avenue for sure. Holly?
I'm wondering, as you listen to those examples, for those of you who are in close collaboration with schools, what made the difference? I'm wondering if someone has thought about that, like why were you? What allowed you to be in close collaboration? Were you already close partnership with the school, or did they reach out to you because they were concerned about the gaps in programming? Any thoughts on if you can just sort of like, yeah, Yola, yep.
So I am on the staff email, our school staff email, and so I see all the communication, and I'm invited. So like I'm feeling very grateful because I feel very grateful because I'm invited to all the Zoom meetings, and our staff has now every Thursday afternoon there's a staff gathering Zoom meeting, which is recorded. Sometimes I attend, you know, I missed the last one, but then I listen to the recording. So I'm like in the loop all the time. And we talk about after school program as well. So it's just really nice to see that our administration is very supportive and we are part of it, you know, and they see it. We are talking about, the administration is talking about a shorter day. The school would end at 1:30 probably, but then after school program would kick in right away. And for the first hour or so, we'll be collaborating with the school staff, and afterwards we'll have our regular homework, you know, and all the outdoors. Mostly, we'll try to stay outdoors as much as possible as well. And we'll be able probably to use the school's tents because our school is purchasing quite a good number of tents. And so we'll probably be able to use them.
Awesome. Thanks, Yolanta. How about somebody who's finding themselves in a new or deeper partnership? Any examples of how you were able to move that forward?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Lee from the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum. I can maybe talk a little bit about what we've been doing.
Great.
We have amazing partners with, I think Tara Brooks is on this call from Virgins, and I didn't see Mandy or John from Mount A, but I think the thing that has made it allowed us to help in some way is that we already had a really great established relationship. Doesn't help anybody who doesn't already have that right now, but I think that there are probably a lot of organizations out there that would show up for you in a heartbeat. So if you haven't been able to have contact with them, it's not too late to reach out at all. And I think what has deepened our partnership is because of the relationship that we've had so far. By some miracle, we were able to apply for and receive some grant funding before COVID started. So we have been able to, we already had a bit of a team. And we were able, it's just so helpful to have two different perspectives to come up with these creative ideas. So those aren't very concrete comments. Maybe Tara can say some more about what has helped her. From our end, it's not the after school, the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum is not strictly an after school program, but we've been doing after school programming for a long time. And so it goes both ways. The collaboration also helps us and our educators to stay in contact with children, and helped us to think through, to rethink our services. So because of requests in the community, we've got lots of virtual content now, which we would not have had if there hadn't have been requests from the community and from our after school partners. So virtual break camp kicked it off, and we've been doing virtual summer camps. We've been able to start some other programs that we're right now working on. So I'd be glad to answer questions for people who, and I'd love to hear from Tara if Tara has any comments, if she's still on.
Awesome. Thanks, Elizabeth. I think two main things you pick up there is that strong partnership, and then the opportunity to be in conversation, right? Because when you're in conversation, that's when you can find out what's needed and how you can maneuver. I think some of the biggest points of frustration we hear in the field are those of you that are more having to wait for the school to make the decision and then you have to react, right? And then the decision changes and you have to react. It's that reaction piece that's really hard. I don't know if anybody's willing to put themselves on the spot, but if there's someone who is in that position where you're a little bit further removed from the decision making, you know, what is there something there in that spot that if you could, you know, wave a magic wand and have a different type of resources or something that would help? Vanessa, yeah.
So we've had an interesting experience in that we have definitely been part of the conversation with reopening because we're running summer programs and in person. And so people are looking to us for a lot of guidance about what's working and what's not working. I think the thing in the last few days that's been really tricky is that, you know, after school already has a solid plan because we knew what was working. And so we had a great plan, and now the school keeps shifting gears, which I'm completely understandable. However, when they switch those gears, the conversation comes back to me and it says like, we're only going to be open half days and we want after school to take care of the other half, and we're closing on Wednesday and we want you to do that too. And while it feels really nice to be useful and to know that like our programs are warriors for working families, after school programs cannot carry that weight alone. And maybe that's just me and my own feelings about it. But that's been my experience in the last few days, is just kind of getting an email saying we're closing down, yada, yada, yada. Vanessa will take care of it. And I'm like, whoa, dude, I've just done like, you know, 10, 11 hour days for 6 weeks. I am toast. I can't. And then with so many after school programs, I said something to Emmanuel that it's been kind of this double-edged sword, that if you're really linked in with your school and all of your staff are school day staff, that's great for 21C programming. But when the school moves to half day and they want after school to pick up that time for working families, all of our staff is still working at the school. And so I'm like, I have 65 staff people between college and school employees. I have 4. I can't do much with 4. So I think that it feels really hard that sometimes after school is everything feels like it's being put on us to save the working families. And I'm like, I can't do it by myself.
Yeah. Hands up for people that are sort of feeling.
Yeah. Wings has been told the same thing, Vanessa. I know our supervisory unions talk frequently, and our superintendents do. We've been given tasks of filling in all of these blanks, and it's flattering. It's great for our egos, but not great for our budgets, and really doesn't seem like a task that we are going to be able to do as well as we want to do it. That's the thing. If it's the some people in our district are thinking that the after school people can just offer a child care, but not even a good one, just basically making sure that Johnny doesn't hit Joey. And that's more than Wings does. And it's frustrating because we know the program that we want to offer, and we're not willing to settle for that to make it less than. But how we manage to do that and still manage to cover that many hours and that many kids and that much staff, how are we going to get that staff is something they expect us to wave a magic wand, and it's just not happening.
Staffing, funding, timing. How are folks on space? A lot of conversations about tents.
Speak
People
to that.
playing. Yeah,
a little bit,
Caitlin.
Holly. So we run licensed programs in schools, and sitting a little idle right now about what space will be available, looking at group size and if we're going to need like additional classrooms to add to our license. And with that, is that going to go against what the school's policies are? For example, if they only want half the kids to go on those days, how can we run programming? So like hitting a barrier there. So we're looking at additional community spaces that maybe we'll be able to use, but that licensing takes weeks to happen. And I've been speaking with some state licensors just around the policy of like, could that be expedited? Will this be sped up, those processes? And I mean, I already kind of knew that answer, but I felt like I had to ask, and they're like, no, I mean, we can't speed up anything. So for me, I'm like, that's gonna just take a lot of time to get additional spaces licensed. And how do we, that should be happening now, and yet I don't have answers. So, you know, trying to do as much as I can without solid concrete plans is just, it's challenging.
So Caitlin, our licensor had said to us that as long as there are rooms in the building, that we are approved to use by the school, we can call it a walking field trip and use those rooms with the kids. I don't know if you were explained that as well.
That's a great point, Janice. Thank you. Yes, walking field trips, that makes a lot of sense.
And I will say Crystal Mashad from the head of licensing is going to be on this call next week. And we'll communicate with her all these questions. So they have a heads up ahead of time. I know it's one more week. So everything you're doing, Caitlin, right, to have those connections and conversations in between, you know, is really important as well. Kara Sargent?
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question sort of about the walking field trips, because we have in the past used non-licensed spaces, you know, spaces that weren't included in the license, but we were not allowed to use attendance in those spaces for subsidy. Like basically you're not getting paid when children are not in the licensed space.
Okay.
That's what we were told. So for example, our music room was not part of our licensed space. So if children were in the music program, we could not charge for the time that they were there.
So what I'm going to suggest we do is that next week, when Crystal is here, we talk about licensing specifically around spaces, and I can give her the heads up on that. And we also are going to have Brina Holmes from the Department of Health here next week. I saw that there was a number of questions about which guidelines are we supposed to follow? Are we following the child care guidelines or the school day guidelines? So we will have both of those folks here next week. I'm going to do one more quick screen share to get a little bit more information from you so we can make the best use of those next few calls. So I'm going to go back to Mentimeter, and some of you have already started filling it in. Our first question for you is, you know, who else do you want to hear from on these calls? Department of Health, licensing, Agency of Education, superintendents, principals, leagues of cities and towns, mental health experts, other. So once again, if you go back to menti.com and you use the code at the top of the page, you can put your vote in for who you'd like to hear from, if we can get them on future calls. So looking at the responses as they're coming in, like I said, we will have the Department of Health next week with the Child Development Division, and it looks like we need to do some work in getting the Agency of Education and some of the education state organizations here. And mental health experts is also coming in strong. So we will take this and try to plan out the next few weeks. So thank you for that. Another poll, this is an open answer. So we're gonna have two questions for you around this. The first is, what can we do? We tried to release some early tools. We are doing some convenings, but what would help you most? Is it helping to find alternative spaces? Is it alternative staffing models? Is it PR in your local community? Is it really pushing that petition? Like what is going to really help you? So this is an open-ended that you can type in, and they should start to show up on the screen. I'm hearing the staffing thing. I mean, not only from here, but from what you were speaking to earlier. So we need to do some clever thinking as a community. We do continue to advocate for funding for you at the state level. And it's very helpful to know your priorities. You see some things on remote learning opportunities, so we will pick that back up. See what we can do about virtual programming, virtual platforms. Thank you. Keep adding those in. The second related question is, what can you, having sort of looked at some of the resources, some of the stuff we talked about, is there, what can you commit to for your colleagues, so we can be in this together? Sharing a local success story that we can promote on the website, circulating the petition, being on calls like this to share best practices. And you can put in here too, what you're hoping others will share back. Thanks. Right, we have one more. So we did a word cloud at the beginning, seeing how we're feeling. Just want to sort of gauge as we sign off. It's 2 o'clock. You have a chance to enter 3 words again. Just want to sort of gauge where we are. If anything's changed, or if you want to write the same 3 words, it's fine. It looks like we've kept hopeful. We got some tired and hungry. Got added in. Committed and connected, coming through. Some overwhelmed, but also some motivated. All right. Thank you for your sharing today. Thank you for showing up. This is just the first of many. Please be in touch during the week. Please be in touch if you have stories to share that we can highlight. Please be in touch if you have specific requests that we can help elevate. We're in conversations almost every day with different state agencies and partners and so forth. So anything that we can do to help elevate your voice, we'd be glad to do. So thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your work. And we will sign off now. Appreciate it. Take care. Be safe, everyone. Take care of yourselves.